All right, you're coming in here. Okay, so I'm Forrest Chang. This is Opal New Hope. This presentation has been rated R for Ruby. I want to call out that for optimum viewing experience, please wait until the text hits the middle of the screen before you read. This will make sense when you see it. All right. All right. So, thank you. Quick show of hands. Who works with web? Yeah, about 80% there. Who codes in Ruby? Surprisingly, still only 80%. Who has to work with JavaScript? 70% there. Of you guys, who likes Ruby better? More than the last slide, amazingly. All right, so you are my target audience, but everyone else is welcome. So, per the crawling text, it is a time of JavaScript revolution, right? JavaScript is everywhere. It's on the desktop. It's on the mobile browsers. We have it in the back end now. So, performance, what used to be slow is no longer. V8 kind of leads this charge. It powers Chrome and Node. But the other engines, some of which you've probably never heard of, they're all getting faster, right? And you can't ignore the libraries and frameworks that are there. You know, we started out with DOM libraries, jQuery, Prototype, and then GUI stuff, XJS, YUI, et cetera. These days, the rage is all in the MV Star frameworks. And there's just so many more libraries, D3, game frameworks, charts, all kinds of stuff, right? It's truly an exciting time in web technology. A lot like it was for Ruby, late 2000s there. I love this dude. I'm at Rails Conf, a picture from O'Reilly. But there's a problem. The language is JavaScript.
What a piece of junk.
I repeat, that language is JavaScript.
What does that got to do with anything?
Everything. JavaScript is the path to the dark side. JavaScript leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
So if you've done any substantial amount of JavaScript, you may have felt the way Yoda did. So when I look at the Ruby community, I think of it as a forward-thinking group of polyglots. Like we like Erlang, we like, you know, whatever the thing is. We look at what's appropriate for the job. So you really can't ignore the possibilities and opportunities that are happening in the JavaScript revolution. All this momentum behind JavaScript, there's clearly a strong pressure to adopt or switch over, you know. And it feels something like this to the Ruby programmer.
If you will not be turned, you will be destroyed.
And no one wants to be destroyed. So let us segue now to Ruby. Mats wrote this once. For me, the purpose of life is partly to have joy. Programmers often feel joy when they can concentrate on the creative side of programming. So Ruby is designed to make programmers happy. So you might infer then the purpose of Ruby is what? Anyone? Bueller? To make you happy, right? And so then the Ruby way would be to do more of what makes you happy, which in my mind is not this. Oh, you can't read that. That's okay. You can't read it normally anyways. So ultimately, this is a talk about happiness. So the pitch that I have for you today is that Opal will make you happy. The premise is this. Ruby makes me happy. Probably you too. You're at RubyConf, right? It'd be kind of odd for you not to like Ruby and be here. So if Opal is Ruby, then Opal makes me happy, and thus should make you happy. Does JavaScript make me happy? Not as much. I still like to code regardless of language, but it's just not as fun. So a quick background. My journey with Opal is what I call JDD, joy-driven development. So the background on that is that I don't really need Opal. My day job, vanilla Rails, and some moderate amount of Ajax is perfectly adequate. I don't need to have these crazy, super Ajax-y, nothing in the back end sort of thing there. In my life, I have 4 kids. I have no time, right? But I'm having so much fun, I can't put it down. Well, not like a good book. So it's just too fun for me. So the purpose of this talk is to share this joy with the rest of you guys. So what is Opal? Opal is a Ruby to JavaScript source-to-source compiler. And in that fashion, it's similar to CoffeeScript. There is a small runtime, and this allows us to support method missing, operator overloading, arity checking, all these things that you can do in Ruby that you can't do in JavaScript. In short, it's Ruby in the browser, which is
Awesome! Totally awesome!
We can concisely describe Opal as code. So you can see here, Opal is a subclass of Ruby. It includes browser access, JavaScript interaction. Runs in the browser, runs in Node, makes you happy. So a quick look at the GitHub page. You can see there's 13 projects, and I'll be talking about a good many of these, just to give you a feel that there's a body of official repo work. So now I'm going to switch gears to my David Letterman mode. I have the Opal Show Top 10 minus 2 reasons Opal will make you happy. Countdown. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Top 10 minus 2 Opal, reasons Opal will make you happy. Number 1, it's just Ruby and a viable one. Number 2, Greenspun's 10th rule, Opal edition. 3, solves things the Ruby way, making the programmer happy. 4, frameworks. We don't need no stinking frameworks, but we have some. 5, tools you already know and love. 6, easy integration with web frameworks. Oh, thank you for the 7, awesome in-browser tools. And number 8, new possibilities. So let's look at each one of these. Number 1, it's just Ruby and a viable one. So the first question you probably have is Opal viable? Or is it another one of these toy compiles to JavaScript languages? So you should know that there are at least 6 apps in production now. There's 2 more coming, I believe, at the end of this month. Of these, the biggest apps are the store and the mobile site for a high-end fashion luxury brand. Because of the client confidential agreement the developer has with the company, I can't say who it is, oddly enough. But we can look at some stats for that. So globally, this company has about 2 million unique visitors and 20 million page views a month. The parts that involve Opal, not the whole thing. The store and the mobile part both get about 2 million views a month, so not unreasonable amount of load. Certainly, I think, more than our site. Store is responsive. The mobile works well. So it kind of shows that Opal is not too heavy for the mobile devices. And from this side, it's battle tested for IE8 plus Chrome, Safari, Firefox. So Opal is real Ruby. It's 193 compliant. mostly. So as of 2 days ago, it passes about 3,200 Ruby specs. And the goal is to pass all or nearly all of them. And some things you just can't do because you're in the browser. But it is the desire to be compatible. It's capable of running complex Ruby. ASCII.gen runs unmodified. MSpec runs unmodified. RSpec runs with some small modifications, and that's primarily due to the fact that Opal has immutable strings, and RSpec does not. So, but that's a big testament, because those of you guys who've looked at RSpec know there's a lot of crazy Ruby on that. So for it to pretty much run that with some small modification is substantial. It can compile itself. That means something for some people. And much of the standard lib is in place. So let's look at a testimonial or two. So this is a thread on the Google group, and they were talking about performance. Wow, I can't read that. And so Dan Allen says this: I can attest to the speed and the featherweightness of Opal. The performance is astonishing, actually. I originally expected the conversion of my library, ASCII Doctor, from Ruby to be just an experiment. Instead, it created a viable port and eliminated the need to write JavaScript manually for the client-side usage. So much so that Neo4j is using it for one of their online tools. See GraphGist, blah, blah, blah. And just last month, Sam Ruby was playing around with Opal, and he says it looks very promising. So those of you guys who come to Ruby conferences, you know about that guy. And that guy might say, well, what does DHH think? So a year ago, Ashton J asked DHH. He said, hey, what do you think about Opal, given all the hot stuff that's going on there? And long story short, DHH says, well, I'm not into it. It's just vanilla Ruby. It's not like you have active support available, which kind of defeats the purpose for me. But wait. 2 stars there, but there is active Opal active support there. So Ruby language features in Opal. So I'm not going to read this. There's a lot of bullets there. But the point is to give you a feeling of, look, we support all this stuff. And some of this stuff is really handy and often not in JavaScript. Right? And the point of all this is you can't underestimate the power of a better programming language in the browser. Those of you guys who have chosen Ruby over other languages in the back end, you know what I mean. It's just more fun. Right? And so these 2 tools, which I'll mention many times before I actually demo them, easy to write, easy to read, very little code, which takes us to our next point, which is Greenspun's 10th rule Opal edition. So who knows Greenspun's rule? Oh, good. Then my slide is useful here. So he wrote this: any sufficiently complicated C or Fortran program contains an ad hoc, informally specified, bug-ridden, slow implementation of half of common Lisp. And so this is really a testament to the power of Lisp as your programmers, your program get more and more complicated. You start to do stuff that Lisp had in the first place. It's a Lisp advocacy thing. And to complete my Star Wars circle, here's a cartoon that connects Lisp to Star Wars. Is that big enough to be read? All right, chuckle. Chuckle means you're read. So what then is Greenspun's rule Opal edition? It is this. Any sufficiently complicated JavaScript program contains an ad hoc, informally specified, bug-ridden, slow implementation of half of Ruby. So let's look at Greenspun in action, also known as some attempts inspired by trying to imitate Ruby or emulating Ruby-like features in JavaScript. So we start off with prototype. Everyone pretty much knows Sam Stevenson wrote this to make JavaScript more like Ruby. An underscore, so I'm going to go through this quick. There's a lot of slides and not a lot of time. So Ruby here, Ruby.js. There's no surprise that Ruby is mentioned, in this one. So animation too slow. Okay, struct, Ruby-inspired structs for JavaScript. String.js doesn't call it out, but if you look at the API, it's like making Ruby strings, JS class, Ruby, juice. They don't mention Ruby by name, but if you look at the feature set, Ruby, JavaScript MVC, Ruby-like classes of JavaScript, def.js, super simple Ruby-style inheritance. Here's a good blog post by Yehuda where he pretty much says JavaScript needs Ruby blocks because JavaScript blocks suck. Ryan Humax, again, classes like Ruby's mix-in. Here's the first slide of this scatterpole.com, making JavaScript more like Ruby. Active.js. Actually, Active.js is more of an active or a Rails clone than a Ruby clone specifically here. Red script, Ruby flavor, JavaScript experiment. Formel, so this is worth reading out loud. A contemporary programming language for the discriminating programmer intended to approximate the safety of Haskell and the expressiveness of Ruby, should such an approximation turn out to exist. So here's other attempts to do Ruby and JS. You can see Opal's at the top, and there's been a bunch of these, some of which I think there have been talks or lightning talks about. Long story short, people want Ruby in the browser, even if they don't know it, right? Some people know they don't want JavaScript. So those of you who don't know this meme, this is a ripoff of the smug DHH meme, which there's at least 3 websites that you can put words to DHH's mouths. So instead of the ad hoc, informally specified, bug-ridden, slow implementation, why don't we use the real thing? And that would be Opal. All right, point number 3, solving things the Ruby way, making the programmer happy. So this in itself could have been the whole presentation. I tried to pick some selected examples, and excuse me for any indiscretions that I've done there. I start off with some comparisons, modular code, namespaces, external templates, automation tasks, scope, and then I just do some stuff that's just, this is what you do in Opal. All right, let's look at these. So by modular code, I pretty much mean, not having one giant file, which is sort of the way JavaScript was designed for. And one of the useful bolt-ons is really require.js. So in require.js, you define a module, then you have to require it. And there's often a lot more. You have to make shims for a lot of libraries. And if you look at tutorials, how to use require.js, it's 11 pages. Do this and this and this and this and this. And then you can call these 2 things. What do you do in Ruby? You create a Ruby file or a gem, and you require it. Right? Very Ruby-esque. What do you do in Opal? You create a Ruby file or gem, and you require it. All right, so here's an example from some code that I will show later. This is the actual application.rb. I require some gems, Opal, Opal jQuery, Opal parser comes with Opal. The third one is a gem that I've written, or actually a file, I can't remember. And document ready, Opal IRB console.create console. So just like your back-end coding. Namespacing. So you can do this a number of ways. It's typically about nesting objects in objects that way. You can use namespace functions that you wrote yourself, do it by hand, YUI, Dojo, they all have methods for this one. If you do it by hand, you can see the top code there. I make an object, and I make an object on the object, and this. And of course, you can do it nested below if you know what that tree is. And that gets to be a pain in the butt. So you can see the top line there, where have something that parses a string, makes a namespace, and that function might look something like this. So how do you do the same thing in Ruby? You use modular class, right? So what do you do for Opal? Use modular class. Template external files, there's a lot of stuff here. So I try to make this apple to apple. So I picked sort of JST to compare to ERB. You have to make a JST template file, separate file. You can do this. This is handy. It's unfortunately JavaScript that you put HTML and strings or otherwise mark it off there. You include the HTML, and you call it not super ugly. So for Ruby, I'll use Rails because it's the easiest to show. You make the template file, and sometimes you have to write render, so you don't even have to do that sometimes, right? Template files for Opal, make the external file. You will require it, and then you do template file name render. Automation tasks. So once upon a time, I thought Cake was pretty popular. These days, it seems like Grunt.js is all the rage, though I've been reading some discussions on how it's going down the path of Ant, which of course is evil. So maybe as we talk now, there's something new for these guys. What do we do in Ruby? Rake. If Jim's around, thanks. If Jim's not around, thanks. What do we do in Opal? We use Rake. Scope. So one thing that makes JavaScript painful is that the function is your sole vehicle for scoping. So you have to wrap everything in a function. So this very simple example where I'm trying to make an array of functions that, first one returns alert 0, second one alert 1, et cetera there. For me to store that I in the loop, I have to wrap the function in a function and call it with itself. And while you learn to read this pattern over time, it kind of sucks, right? Scope, I'll just say in a sentence, Ruby has a lot more flexible scoping, and I dare say sane scoping. And Opal has the same. All right, defer execution. So here's a bit of code that's not too ugly, right? Window.setImmediate, function code that you want. But if we compare to what Opal browser gives you, you can write this kind of code. So again, clarity of the code, Ruby versus JavaScript. So now we're out of the comparisons, and I'm going to talk about just things that Opal does. So to use JavaScript from Opal, and again, because we support operator overload, method missing, a lot of non-JavaScripty things. We can't do what JavaScript does and just be syntactic sugar. So we call JavaScript through X strings. The way you call external things in Ruby, you can use the %X thing, or you can use the backticks, and you use this to get values. Opal used to do what's called seamless bridging, the same way in JRuby. You just call it, and then it's like it's a Ruby class. Lately, because of optimization issues, they've switched this to wrapping things in native. So you can see I grab an editor and I call native over the backticks, but this object at editor acts like a Ruby class. All right, so here's something from Opal browser. At the top here, you can create a DOM. Looks a lot like Markaby or other builders. And of course, there's a power to this one. I'll grab an object by ID, and then I have like two ways to append. And again, it's very Ruby-esque. You can see append child or less than. And I'll demo this in the next slide live in the browser there. So again, CSS, you can also write CSS in Ruby if you want. So you can see CSS do, rule, etc. There's cool things like 10.pixels and whatnot here. And then you can append this document head, c.append to document.head. It's all very clear and easy to read. There you go. Tests and specs. So our spec has certainly influenced a lot of things. And these days, Jasmine, I forgot the name of the other library that looks a lot like Jasmine. With Jasmine and CoffeeScript, you can now write tests in the JavaScript world that look a lot like our spec. But I'd say this looks more like our spec. Right? And this is, in fact, code I submitted when I made a PR for Opal jQuery. And I just love the way it reads. You can see the before is clear. I'm doing this. And I actually use a here doc there to say, here's the HTML I'm going to work on. And those of you who know RSpec, it's very clear. It looks better in my mind. There are some other examples I choose not to do, partly because my thing is 46 minutes and I have 45. Things that are easy in Ruby but difficult. There's several ways that you can do monkey patching in JavaScript, all homegrown. Method missing, not really supported. A couple engines support it, but not really. All right,
RAM
next
works.
We ain't got no
RAM works.
We don't need no
RAM works.
I don't have to show you any stinking
RAM works.
All right, so the point of the no frameworks thing. Again, I'll call these examples that I promised to demo. These things were really easy for me to write. Originally, I said, I should go learn Vienna, the built-in but highly undocumented MVC framework they have to do this. But I didn't have to, and that's kind of the strength. Right? And again, the testament of having a better language. Right? So the second demo I will do, I'll talk a little bit about the code. It's 448 lines of code, including white space and debugging lines. It's pretty much plain Ruby, a couple Opal jQuery lines, and that's it. So I'll just show some selected code from that. And then when I do the demo, you can look back and say, the code is this one. So at the beginning, I require gems, Opal jQuery, and then the gem that I wrote, Opal IRB, or actually it's a file in the gem. Then I have a bunch of ERB templates, which I'm going to replace with something else. Require those. So there's a bunch of panes in Opal Inspector. Each one is a subclass of Opal IDE pane. You can see I just have to redefine 4 things. And right down there, I rendered the template the way I showed before. And that's how I render itself. And the way I set up the app, document ready do, I create an IDE. You can see I have a subclass for each one. So I add all the panes to the IDE, and then I use a little jQuery to grab some things in the markup and hook up a connection, like second to last line. You can see Opal close dot on click and a little lambda there, or not a lambda, a block. Right. So and again, so I was able to write, and you'll see the demo, fairly impressive stuff with no frameworks. So Ruby itself is powerful, but you still want libraries. So we have a number one. I'll call it selected ones. Opal jQuery. So this is jQuery wrapped via Opal, and it's not a straight wrapping. It's very, very Ruby-esque. You've seen some of it. Document dot ready, question mark do, stuff like that, or element dot find. I think Adam did a really good job of Rubifying the interface to jQuery. There's Opal Browser, which gives you all kinds of Opal, all kinds of browser functionality, and to include most of the things most people use jQuery for. So if you're not using jQuery, you can just use Opal Browser, get interface to that one, but a lot of people use jQuery. So Vienna is the MVC framework that comes with it. Looks very backbone influenced to me. Astonishingly, how little code is in that framework. And there's Liscio. This is a framework that one of the committers is doing on the side that I really like, and I'll give some code from later. All right, so point number 5. Opal is Ruby, right? So then tools to use for Ruby, like your editor, Emacs, TextMake, Vim, Sublime, RubyMine, they all work, right? Rake, you use Rake, you still use Rake. RSpec, if you love it, great. If you don't, sorry. You can run MSpec. Guard, I use Guard to, when I'm doing the GUI thing, the GUI change and pop up the stuff for that one. It's just Ruby. So whatever tools you use for Ruby, you can still use. But I think even better is that you can reuse all the OO and patterns knowledge and stuff you've learned to do with Ruby as a programming language on the front end, no context change, right? And that's really good.
I love you.
I know.
Easy integration with Ruby web frameworks. So if you use Rails, and I think most people do, you have Opal Rails. Otherwise, we use Opal Sprockets directly, which actually is the magic behind Opal Rails as well. You can use that in rake files to generate static files. Or if you want something that works like Rails, where every time you refresh the browser, you get the latest Opal code, you can set up Opal Server, which is part of Opal Sprockets. So for Opal Rails, the easy way to make a Rails app with that is Rails new project -- JavaScript equals Opal. Now, if you don't like easy things, you can do it by hand. You can add the gem Opal Rails to gem file. You can add the appropriate JavaScript to, and you'll see down there I call it like order matters, which actually is generally true. Then you make star.js.rb files, put code in there. If you like Haml, Opal Rails supports Haml filters, so you can say I have a colon Opal and then just Ruby right there embedded in your template. And specs live under JavaScript/specs, so you can put specs there and run those in the browser. There's a dedicated page Opal Rails gives you for that one. For static file, use Opal Sprockets here, and this is one of my rake tests for the JQ console. So you can see there's a file.open. This is where you want to write it to. You get an Opal environment and you append paths, and then Opal Sprockets magically knows your paths, and so you can just require, like I showed you in the code, and it finds where your stuff is and then automatically concatenates the stuff and all through Sprockets. And then you put it out. And then you can sort of see my rake test shows me it in Chrome afterwards. If you want the thing I talked about, the server, so there's a little rack-based server that you can come with there. You add Opal Sprockets to your gem file. You create the Opal files. Typically an app is the pattern, not required there. You include application.js under assets in your file. Then you make up a simple config.ru, and then you run rackup and then refresh at will. So pretty handy for that one. Number 7, awesome in-browser tools. Opal IRB and Inspector. So I've been talking about this. I finally can show them. Opal IRB, not surprisingly, is IRB for Opal. So I have, of course, command history. I have most readline controls. I'll probably add more. So those of you guys who know GNU readline, I do that one. I have a multi-line editor, which actually I think is actually better than real IRB, where you jump into your own editor, or if you use Emacs, you use it as an inferior, and you write to it. But you can do this all over history, so you can go back 2 lines and edit that one in the multi-line editor. There's a feature I like to call Live Gist, and I'll demo that shortly. Opal Inspector. This is inspired by Ember.js's in-browser Smalltalk code browser. At this point, I could say it's more than inspired. It's a Xerox copy of sorts. And the idea sort of came to me. It's like, well, I'm going to have persistent live Opal objects in the browser. This is a lot like Smalltalk in its image, right? And the goal of sort of going this way is to change the paradigm of web app development. And if you're familiar with Smalltalk and just changing real things at runtime, which we love to talk about in like pry-based development along those lines, life can be different. You write the code, you push in the browser, you make it work in the browser, and you push it back. That's sort of the goal I have with this one. And down the road, I can see that possibly you have better tools in the browser than outside the browser. All right, demo time. So I'm going to lose my timer because I forgot to hit that timer. So hopefully I don't go over. All right, so is that showing? All right. Here's the idea for IRB. So you got your app and you're running, and I've got to find my cursor. It is here. Okay. And so you can pop up, and so you're here. This is Ruby Red, by the way. And so this is just a plain. This is basically IRB. I can do this. I can put f, right, 1.10 each. I puts I, right, that one. So I have command line history, so I can go up, Control P or up arrow. I have read line, so Control A, Control D a couple times, Alt F, and I'll change this one to alert I, and then returns. Oops, I made an error. What was it? Thank you. All right, and then of course, so we got stuff, right? And so, when you have multi-line stuff, and I hit Control M, and now I have multi-line editor, so now I can do things much more happily. Bar, alert, bar, end, f equals foo.new, f.bar. And then Control Enter will execute that. So you get that one, that's here. So you can see, so now I have the history this way, and I go through. So let's say I'm coding some stuff. Well, let me go edit that thing from before. So I hit up, and then Control M, and then I can re-edit this, And so that's kind of cool, and that's, I think, a little more than what IRB does now. The other thing that you can do, so I was talking about live gist. So I hit Control L, and that gives me a link. So if I open the link in a new window, there you go. This brings up the code and runs it for you. So the idea of this gist, I can send you this gist, and it will bring it up. And actually, this right now is local because I don't trust the internet. But I have the same thing running off my GitHub I/O thing for the project. So you can sit there and it will point to that one in the GitHub. So you'll have the IRB with your code, and then he can monkey with it and send you one back, and then you can do that one. So I think that's kind of cool. And again, different than what IRB gives you. What else? Okay, so let's do some. Let me get rid of that one. Let's do some of that DOM stuff that I was talking about. All right, here you go. So I'm talking about building a DOM. So D equals DOM do div.blue do h1. I'm blue, and div.red do h1. And so for those of you who do Haml or Jade or Slim, this should be very familiar to you. Oh, bite me, sorry. Okay, and so you can see I actually have my div equals $document my div, and again this should be similar to my example before, and then my div. Hopefully this works right first time. Oh, you can't see it because it's much smaller. So these are added now; they weren't there before. Right? And so you can see DOM manipulation pretty straightforward. Let's do some CSS now. Okay. C equals CSS do rule.blue do color blue and rule.red do color red and c.append to, and hopefully you're seeing, when you look at this head, right? All very straightforward for the Rubyist. Okay, and so if I show it now, there you go, right? So so much better than JavaScript. All right, so let's go over to the Opal Inspector. So same idea. I got this program, and so I need to show the inspector, and this markup is nearly 100% lifted from Amber.js, which is actually a very odd markup that I'm very happy to replace soon. So I have a number of tabs inspired by them. The transcript is their log, everything that goes here. I've set up inspector to have two things where you console.log will go to the log inspector in your web developer tools, and there's a Ruby specific one, because there's times when I want to see everything, and I go to that one. And there's times when I only want to see the stuff I'm spitting out, because you can imagine if you're looking at that one, it can be very verbose. So that's transcript. So the IRB I showed you earlier is this tab. For small talk, it's their try it little browser, which actually works more like try Ruby, where you write the code, you can do try it or inspect it or something, run it, I think, there. So this idea of running tests, so this one I haven't done any work on, but the idea is I'll be able to run the specs out of the browser there. Let's go back. So this is the same IRB as before. 1.10. So true to IRB, the output that you have here is here. But you might do a lot of stuff in IRB. So you can have this one, but you can go back to the transcript and you can clear this. So you can see you have the history here and the place that you worked there. That's somewhat useful there. I have a test class in inspector here. So, oops, sorry. Okay. Right, and so foo is a class. It has an A and B attribute. So I can type here, go, let me see what f.a is. Oh, that's broken. That's okay. We can monkey patch that. Right, class foo adder access. Or did I spell that right? A, B, and so we do that one. Now f.a has a value. So, in Ruby we got f.inspect, which in this case, not so useful. Control P. I have something called O-inspect, Opal inspect. And this pops you over. It's usually a jump to tabs. So then I have a visual tool here, which, you can look at this one. And even better, I can go in here and say, new string return. Right? So now you can mess with this stuff. And then we go back over to IRB because I'm writing some stuff. And f.a is, f.a is a new string. And vice versa, I can change it here and push it there. And so you can see where this goes. Let me make a couple other variables. Int equals 10. I apologize for the scrolling. I did this in a much higher resolution when I practiced. String equals stir. So also, I keep track of everything that you define in IRB. So look, these things that I've written are here. So a lot of times, you ever do stuff in IRB and then 400 lines up was this variable that you wanted you don't know the name of? Here it is. And the goal here is that I grab this, click this, and then we go over to the instance browser. So this is all tabs but the class browser. So one of the big things with the class browser in Smalltalk is you can go and look at everything. You start to see there's methods and various. And I have to change this because this is stolen straight from Amber.js. And we don't quite have the same exact structure. But class, so here's the constant. So you can see Ruby engine. We call it Opal here. And the idea is inspect anything and change it, So I can go here and say, well, you know what? The Ruby engine is Perl. Wouldn't that be a mind-blowing kind of activity? Save this and run, just like I did in IRB, So where I'm going with this, and I suppose most of you guys aren't that Smalltalky savvy, but the idea is the way you used to work is you write your code, get in the browser, do this, change the code, redeploy, and sometimes it's just refresh your page. But no, it's now write the code, go in the browser, make it work in the browser, push it back to the server when it all works. And so I'm really looking at a paradigm change there. So back to my slides now. So this is what I did with IRB, and this is sort of what I did with that one. There's one remaining feature that I'm trying to get Adam to build for me, and that's the much better support. In Smalltalk, you can ask everything about everything. So I kind of drive a lot of these features in Opal now. So I need this feature now where on the front end and the back end, all the code changes I can change. So those code changes that I make, I want to record them so I can say, hey, what's this method that I've written since it was written on the server? Or even lambdas. What's the method? What's the code for the lambda? So let me pull that lambda back up and edit it. So once we have this feature done, I'll probably then release Opal Inspector. And then I'll feel like this.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
All right, the new possibilities. So With the demo in browser development, right? I'm looking to change this paradigm. I think we get better and better. The dev tools get better. You're doing more of this anyways, but we do it for Ruby. The example I use, I took mostly from Smalltalk, but the way we do IRB is different than the way Smalltalk does, but that's the way we do it. So from Ruby also. I worked on list machines, freshman internship in college. Pretty awesome. Don't remember much, but I have to rediscover it because there's some really awesome things I want to pull from that over that way. Standard UI platform. It's my opinion that I think Ruby tools partially stagnated because there's no standard GUIs, right? There's GTK, WX, Windows, QTTK. I wrote this tool, you wrote this tool, you know what that, and then bring in like JRuby, then there's Swing, or I forget the one that's in Eclipse, SWT. It's like you don't even have a thing there, right? Everyone's got a browser. We have one platform. So down the road, these tools on the front end, we can use in the back end. Anyone use Better Errors? Better Errors is awesome. You put in your code, not only does it give you a better navigatable stack trace, but it has a little IRB window if you put, I forget, like binding pry or whatever there. And so you can see the broken error, and then you can type in that IRB window, and it will change it on the server. So you can sort of do what I'm saying there. So it's like, well, if Better Errors can do this, and these cool tools I write for Opal, you could use to run on the back end. So like this class browser, there's nothing for back end Ruby. Well, once we get this working for Opal, it's not that much. You set up some kind of JSON server or something and push these back and forth to the server. So the goal is better tools across the board for Ruby, not just for Opal. So what's next? All right, so I think Meteor.js is really cool. This same code on the front end and the really blurring of what is what, I think that's a really exciting direction that Opal makes this popular. Opal, Ruby on the front end, Ruby on the back end, whether that's MRA backend, Opal front end, or Opal on the front end and Opal on Node back end. There's possibilities. I think that's really good. Evented safe Ruby libs. So this is another thing that holds Ruby back. We got lots of libs that are not evented or thread safe. So as Opal matures and we write more and more gems for Opal, which again is Ruby, you'll have gems and libraries that are run on both sides that will be evented safe because we're of course running on top of JavaScript. So that's cool too. So here's something I want to bring up. Component-based coding all in one place for the web in Ruby. So as a long-time GUI programmer before I became a web programmer, I got this thing. So let me dig down in JavaScript and change, and let me come back up, and now I'm going to go and change the mark. Oh, wait, change gears. Now I got to change the way it looks, right? That's, for a guy who wrote X Windows stuff, it's like lame, right? And how do you do OO with that? Ruby so OO. How do you do OO with OO? Here's a HAML. Well, partials is sort of there, and Sass has some things, but each one is its own separate modality, right? So Lisio is that MVC framework I talked about, a Ruby class, all parts written in Ruby. So the HTML, CSS, and the behavior. So let's look at a very simple Lisio component. Is this code readable? I unfortunately can't zoom in anymore. But, so you can see, here's some behavior. On click of what, do this, shekels.navigate, right? Here's the element I'm associated with. I showed you HTML as a builder. Here's the markup. Here's the CSS. You can see, the 60.pixels stuff, right? All one place, one language. No jump in 3 files, even if RubyMine makes that relatively easy to do. It's all here, one place. And then you can see, if you do CSS like this, a lot less cascading. I hate CSS where you never know what it looks like until you jump into the Chrome and try to navigate. Oh, it looks like this. You can see that you do a lot less cascading with this. And then you can see, well, I'll have a header. Then I'll have like class sexy header, which is a subclass of header. And I might override just one line of this and do it again. So all this OO stuff that you can't do now, you can do. And it's all Ruby. So I want to show just Sass-like nested stuff, and you can see you can do more than Sass. You can put Ruby code. Well, if I'm this, look like this, else look like that. So you can see that you can, got the full power of Ruby. All right. So here's the sad question. Can you imagine a world without Ruby? So I heard Charlie Nutter kind of saying, well, it's FUD that Ruby's dying. But in truth, there's a possibility. JavaScript Revolution has gone there. Lots of people are saying, Ruby is dead. Ruby is dead. So maybe with Opal, we can stem that one. So let's facilitate the fantasy land of Ruby everywhere. Back end, we have options, MRI, JRuby, Rubinius. Mirror, I don't know if I have any JRuby guys here. I love this project. Subset of Well, I don't know. Look it up. We have mRuby for embedded, mobile. There's Ruby Motion, there's Moby Ruby. I don't know if Rubato is really as viable as these from last time I played with it. And then Opal, which runs everywhere that JavaScript runs, right? So let's have a dubious history as Star Wars films. Episode 1, The Phantom JS Menace. Misa used JavaScript on the back end. Misa used JavaScript everywhere. Misa used JavaScript in ways unintended by founder. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Just read. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Evil Empire complete. Brings us to now. Episode 4, A New Hope. Opal One Kenobi, you're my only hope. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And like reality, episode 7 is to be determined. The question I have is, will it involve you? So, resist the empire. Join the alliance today. This is my call to arms. I would love to have some momentum like Rubinius. For those of you who saw it, RubyConf 06, Evan Phoenix gave this talk of just this idea he had and a little code that he wrote on the plane on the way over. Same time next year, it's a freaking movement. 9 zillion commits, like 20 committers, anyone can commit stuff, right? Really cool. Opal is, I've already shown you, there's a lot in Opal already. So hopefully this brings some attention there where, no, we got 13 repos. Officially, is some side things, code, production apps, 2 million views, page month, right? Stuff is good. So things are pretty good, can always be better. Pretty much Adam and Matt, they bang on the language stuff. And I'm glad they do that so then I can work on tool stuff, which I know more about. So we need more live, more complete libraries there. Documentation, not surprisingly, not great. We need your help. Things you can do. 1, try it out. See if you like it. There's on opalarb.org, there's a try Ruby. Left is the code. It'll generate the JavaScript. It'll put the results down here. That's cool. My Opal IRB embed thing there, this is the GitHub IO page. I'll have the slides out so you don't have to vigorously try to scribble that down. Communicate. IRC seems to be the active place. Everyone but me is in Europe, so time's a little odd. There's a Google group, not super active. Document, try things out in Document. I think that's what I'll be doing at some point. Contribute. It's just Ruby. So this is the whole talk I think Evan Phoenix talked about. Rubinius. You don't have to know C to contribute to Ruby like you do for MRI. You can write in Ruby. So this is Opal. You know Ruby. You can contribute to Opal. Right? Convert gems. You want a gem you want? Some of them will run, some of them won't. Immutable string, which they're talking about maybe undoing that, but you can imagine optimization-wise, that's much better. Thread safe-wise, it's actually better. But you can imagine there's a lot of existing Ruby stuff that doesn't obey that. Have fun, right? That's the, be garbage, collect, change the world, have fun, be happy. All right, so my question, will you join the dark side? Or code with the Force? You choose. But for me,
I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
So, let us change the world. Defeat the evil. Save Ruby. Be happy. All right, so some quick resources. The Opal RV org is good. GitHub, 13 projects, read the code. IRC, I think, is the best place, and they're pretty responsive. Google Groups, not very active, but if that's more your speed. I'll call my blog because I have a couple articles when I first got into it, and then I will certainly write more now that I'm not writing presentations for RubyConf. It's not a lot, better than nothing. Some of it's out of date, but that'll be changed. Otherwise, there's really not a lot in the web for that one. Thanks. Matt's for Ruby. Thank you. DHH for allowing us to have day jobs that have Ruby. Adam and Aaliyah, they're the committers to Opal, so they've done a good job. I love the community. back to the whole happiness thing. Love you guys. George Lucas, thanks for Star Wars. And I'm not as picky as the guys that are all mad at his revisions. And you guys for listening to this presentation. So lastly, like everyone else, and it's unfortunately the last day, we're hiring Stamford, Connecticut, New York. If you want to do that, contact us. Diego's been giving out all his cards, so that's it. So you can find me on Twitter, but I tweet more about food than anything else. And may the force be with you.